Welcome to the Electric Playground. How is everybody doing out there? We are doing our very first episode of Electric Playground Live, and we noticed that we ran the Vic's Basement graphics, so there's still some kinks to work out, but we will work them out. I want to make sure first, before we get into this episode, that you can hear me okay, that everything is looking all right, so take the time to let us know in the chat. Blake is monitoring everything. I've got a different screen here that I can sort of watch as well, but we want to make sure that you can hear us. And the idea behind Electric Playground Live, obviously we've been very grateful for you guys to walk with us and watch our content as we've transitioned to YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and everything else that we've been doing. And we've been learning a lot the last couple of years, doing a lot of streams and doing a lot of edited material and posting it up there. And then I kind of started talking it over with Blake and Bear and Johnny Millennium, who is on the chat. How's it going? Happy Console Gamer. And we started to realize that maybe a cool direction for EP in 2018 is to kind of blend it all and to make as much live content as possible, but to also throw to some edited pieces and some of the content that we kind of curate for you and put together for you. And so that's exactly what we're doing today. And this is the first episode that we are doing that with. It's the second episode of our 28th season, which is mind-blowing. I've been doing this a little while. But we're going to have some fun. And the coolest thing about this is that everybody that's tuned in live, who's with us on the chat, is a part of the show that we're going to make. And I encourage you to send us out your questions and your comments. We're not going to do the question of the day, I think, this season, which we have been doing the last couple of years, because as much as we can, we're going to be live and we will be answering your questions and getting your comments and stuff. And to kick things off, we have an incredible guest. His name is Evan Narcisse, and he's a journalist and a critic who writes about video games, comics, movies, and TV, and he's often focusing on the intersection of blackness and popular culture. He's a senior staff writer at IO9, which is a fantastic website. He previously wrote for The Atlantic, Time Magazine, and Kotaku. You may have heard of a few of those. He's taught a course on video game journalism at New York University and appeared as an expert guest on CNN and NPR. He's a native New Yorker, and he now lives in Austin, Texas. Hello, Evan.
Hey, Vic. How you doing?
I'm very good, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
What you didn't include in the bio is that we've known each other for a long time.
Yes, we have. We've been friends forever. And I don't know if it was Scott Jones that introduced us or if we just met each other at one of the
I feel like
events.
I'd seen you about video game events and junkets before, but definitely I got to know you better and the levels of your geekdom once you started working with Scott Jones, our good friend.
Yes, because you both lived in New York. You both worked at Crispy Gamer together.
That's right.
It's interesting where this life takes us, right? These weird journeys.
Yeah, that's been my whole world for like a month.
How do you feel? We're going to get into Black Panther very soon here, but I want to know how you feel making the transition. You were primarily in tech and video games, and now you are writing about science fiction and comic books, things that I think you were maybe more of a fan of. And now you're kind of able to, meet the people that make all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. There's I think there's a shared reservoir for a lot of this stuff in terms of like narrative inspirations, genre inspirations, and stuff like that. Video games, obviously, from their storytelling perspectives, draw a lot from science fiction and comic books and stuff like that. So there's a lot of crossover. But that said, it's weird. I think 2017 was one of the lowest kind of percentage of years in terms of actual game playing that I did for work ever. And that felt weird. I'm still friends with a lot of the Kotaku people, and I know what's going on. But there's no substitute for actually playing a game.
You missed a great year, man. Last year was incredible.
Yeah, I do a lot less gameplay, which is weird, but I've been playing some stuff. Like I played Horizon Zero Dawn. I've been playing Telltale's Batman games, and I love all that stuff. So it's been a great experience to shift and still use some of the tools I've crafted, critically speaking, to cover other stuff.
Well, one thing that I know about you, and this isn't true of every video game journalist that I know, is that a lot of us would end up at Comic-Con, at San Diego Comic-Con, And we would talk to the video game companies that were making comic book games and things like that. But generally, most of the video game people would focus on video game announcements. I would see you for comic book junkets and comic book interviews, and
Yeah.
you've always been a lifelong comic book
Yeah.
hardcore.
Yeah.
And
I've
I
been,
am too, but it's cool to see that we have similar interests there.
I've covered comic books almost as long as I've covered video games.
Mm.
I freelance a lot. We met when I was a freelancer. So I basically went to the places where my skills could take me, and it was both places. I got to write about comic books and video games, a bunch of different outlets. So yeah, I've always been able to dual wield in that way.
That's awesome. Do you have favorites? Obviously we're going to talk about Black Panther, but I'm curious if Black Panther was one of the characters that was one of your favorites.
Oh yeah, probably my number one favorite superhero character in mainstream comics, Black Panther. Batman's a close second. I'm a big Dick Grayson fan. Man, who else? I'm actually a big Superman fan too. I mean, of the newer kind of crop of characters, I love Squirrel Girl. I think the work that Ryan North does in that book is amazing. I'm currently loving Mr. Miracle by Tom King. I tend to be a guy who follows talent rather than characters.
Yeah, yeah.
If a writer I like or an artist I like gets on a run on a book, I'll usually check it out.
Awesome, awesome. I want to talk a little bit about Black Panther, and
Yeah.
Obviously you're working on this new comic called Rise of the Black Panther, which is supposed to be a bit of a...
Yeah, the idea is to explore T'Challa's early years in a new miniseries and have it be geared toward people who didn't have like decades of knowledge about the character. It's not happening in the movie universe at all. It's happening solidly in the comic book universe. But at the same time, the hope is that using some of the same characters that are in the movie, you'll pull readers in who've maybe seen the movie and are curious to learn more about T'Challa and Shuri and some of these other characters, and at the same time provide a fresh angle on some of the things we've seen already in Black Panther's publishing history and all, but mostly I'm trying to show new moments from T'Challa's first year as king.
When did you first discover Black Panther in your life? And tell me about the sort of moments that led up to this character meaning something to you and then ultimately becoming one of your favorites, if not your favorite.
So the first Black Panther story I can remember is an old Avengers story. It's funny, I've told this story a few times now. I need to figure out the issue number and who actually worked on it. As best as I can remember, it was Roy Thomas and John Buscema, and it was a story where I think Clint Barton was in Giant Man mode there because for a while he was Giant Man, he stopped being Hawkeye, and it was T'Challa, the Black Knight, Hawkeye, maybe the Vision too. And there was something going on in Asgard where they had to fight both Surtur and Ymir. Surtur the Fire Giant, who was just in Thor Ragnarok,
Mm-hmm.
and Ymir, who is an ice giant. And that's what I remember. And, I don't remember if T'Challa took his mask off in that issue, if I had any way of knowing that he was an African character, somebody who looked like me. But I liked his costume and his moves. He seemed like really cool and different than the other characters. And from there, I was kind of intrigued, and I'd read more Black Panther stories whenever I could pick up, issues in the quarter box or something, back issues. And I really, really got into him. The thing that really made me feel like connected to him is that he was different than some of the other Black characters you'd see in comic books. Like, he was different than Luke Cage. He was different than Black Lightning or some other characters. There was this inherent nobility. He was regal, he was a scientist, and Wakanda was like this amazing country full technological wonders. It was more science fictiony than the other black characters that were popular at the time, and
Yeah.
that really attracted me.
Yeah, and I want to pause for a second here to make sure you don't have your phone on your table, because I think we might be picking it up. There,
Oh, we got some vibration? Oh.
yes. It's
All
so
right.
crazy. Your phone is ringing in Austin, and we are picking it up all over the world,
Yeah.
which is
All right.
pretty
That
rad.
should be good.
Yeah.
There's a heated group chat going on. I'm getting alerts for.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's one of the things that kind of struck me about Black Panther from I haven't read tons of issues, and I've seen him pop in some of the comics that I've read. I've loved him too ever since I always thought he just looked so badass. That costume is awesome.
I think it's one of Kirby's best costume designs.
It's so cool. It's so sleek. It definitely evokes a little Batman with the ears and everything, but
Sure.
It's an awesome costume, and man, what a debut in Captain America! Just incredible, you know. Like,
Yeah.
was it Captain America? Yeah, it was Captain America. I'm
Yeah,
getting
Captain
them a
America
little
Civil War.
bit,
Yeah.
getting them all confused.
I know there's multiple movies a year. It's hard to keep track in your head.
But one thing that I've kind of recognized is that the idea of Wakanda and T'Challa, it's almost like they could survive, and we could have stories where they're completely not connected to any of the other Marvel universe. And almost when you read these stories, and they're interesting, and they're exciting, and they're totally unique, and when the rest of the Marvel universe comes in, it feels weird. It feels like what the hell are you doing there? You know?
Yeah, that's very much the approach I'm taking with this series. Is that like, Wakanda's been basically like hermetically sealed, right? Like it's been, airtight borders for all of its history.
Yep.
And then these borders start to open up. That's T'Challa's decision. That's kind of the main through line of the series, is that he decides he has to open up the country to the rest of the world. Their isolation has made them a target. When other characters show up, the first page of the first issue is Captain America, being held by the throat by T'Challa's grandfather. Is like, yeah, y'all got to go. We don't do this outsider thing here. But Steve Rogers, being the man that he is able to make enough of an impression on Azuri to be gifted with a little bit of vibranium, and that's the vibranium that goes into a shield in the comics.
Yep. Those are some of my favorite panels in the story, by the way, because it shows the family identity and the majesty of the family, that
Right.
these leaders, but it also shows the nobility of Captain America. And it's important storytelling.
Yeah, it's and that was a good little nugget to start things off. Bring a little familiarity, a character that a lot of people know, and introduce him in a different context where, like, hey, you know what? This trust that people automatically impart on you for being a symbol of America's best values and all that jazz doesn't play here. We don't know you.
Yeah.
We don't do outsiders. Get to step in.
Yeah, there's almost a bit of a parallel with Wonder Woman and the Amazons in a way, right? Like, they are fine without the rest of the world, and the world comes crashing in their door, and then they kind of have to rise up and, I guess, take a seat at the table and try. And I guess that's what we're going to be seeing from your series, but also a little bit from the movie, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I don't know anything about the movie. I haven't seen the screenplay. I haven't seen the movie yet. It's weird because we're kind of telling the same story in different mediums with different histories, different tools. I'm having T'Challa introduce Wakanda to the world, and they're doing the same thing. And obviously, when people realize that you are a new country with a valuable resource that can't be found anywhere else, they're going to try and get it through various means. So I know there is an aspect of that in my story, which is, not a shock. People wanted vibranium to steal vibranium from Wakanda for decades, centuries. And I imagine they'll be doing the same thing too. So we're doing similar things and using similar characters. But my version of Shuri, for example, the Black Panther's younger sister, is going to be obviously a lot different than theirs. She's a different age, different skill set. And I think she's going to play a different role in my story and their story. So I'm super excited to see what they cook up. I cannot wait for this movie.
How important is Black Panther right now for Marvel and for, you know, fans of comic books and fans of this character? Like this is the character's been around for a long time, but this is really the year that a flag gets planted in the ground in a way.
Yeah, this is the Wakanda takeover 2018. It's going to be, I mean, obviously, Vic, you've seen the numbers on the ticket sales, right? Like they're
Yep.
astronomical. It's tracking better than Captain America: Civil War. I think, you know, T'Challa's symbolic importance is that, like, you know, he's not a character that's ever had to move through, for lack of a better term, whiteness, to matter, right? Like
Yep.
his symbolism, and the symbolism of Wakanda is this unbroken chain of tradition, and nobility, accomplishment, achievement, with none of the negative stereotypes that other comic book characters have had to go through,
Yep.
real life people that have had to go through. You know, it's a very resonant what if. What if we existed unto ourselves, and we're able to accomplish something, and I mean we as Black people, and we're able to accomplish something so monumental. So it's powerful. I feel like that's the vast majority of people who are signing up to see this movie and who are excited about it. That's what's resonating with them. That this message of kind of unalloyed, undiluted Black achievement, Black excellence, in a fictional construct like this is, I mean, it's super great, and especially in a year when we see old prejudices
Yep.
being drummed up for political purposes, and civil rights, human rights being eroded all over the world, but yes, in particular in the United States.
It sucks that it has to be timely, right?
Yes, yeah,
it should just be a celebration. It shouldn't be a political thing, and it sucks that it will be painted in this direction. But honestly, Black Panther, I feel, couldn't come at a better time.
Yeah, but you know, the character's always had a political subtext to it.
Yep.
You know, even in the hands of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, two middle-aged Jewish guys who created the character in 1966. You know, they were reacting to stereotypes of the day, subverting them, and also kind of reinforcing them too. But you know, the changes that happened when this character got handled by Black creators were significant, and I think that's what you're going to wind up seeing on the screen. Which isn't to downplay Lee and Kirby at all, but I feel like this movie has a definite intent and message about what it means to be a Black person in the modern world.
Well, and you know, I think also importantly, like Wonder Woman kind of broke down some barriers for inclusion and for you know, playing to a different potential audience. I feel it's really incredible and about goddamn time that we have a character that plays to an international audience. You know, that kind of opens the door to the idea that these heroes can be from anywhere. And obviously, we have these, you know, otherworldly heroes and things like that that aren't necessarily just based out of America. I think this is a really cool new open door, and presumably this could lead to a lot of interesting, you know, characters from all over the place. Yeah,
I mean, you know, if we're talking about your middle of the road, straight white male characters, we're not in danger of them ever being underrepresented, like probably like ever.
No.
Right? But you know, every time you have a wave of representation for Black characters, whether it be like in fiction or nonfiction projects, or I'm talking like sitcoms on TV or movies and stuff like that, you know, you wonder, okay, how long is this going to last? Even now, I'm wondering, like, okay, how long is this going to last? It'd be nice to feel like, okay, it doesn't have to be a fight every time.
Right.
And maybe this movie is going to help usher in that kind of moment. You know, I feel like if you look at a movie like Get Out last year, it completely changed the game in terms of what people would expect from a horror movie, a small budget horror movie that wound up making like exponentially more than it cost to make, a huge success, which is what Hollywood cares about.
Yep.
But also the messaging too was unapologetic about, you know, what the lived experience of what it means to be a Black person in this country, in America. You're in Canada. But yeah, so that stuff is significant, and the idea that, you know, that messaging can be part of the entertainment. It doesn't have to be like this whitewashed, vanilla kind of unseasoned experience. It can be something that speaks to like, okay, the particular rhythms and textures of Black diasporan culture. Like, so, and I want that for like people from all different walks of life. Like I was
Totally.
one of those people who was like, who I tried to watch Netflix on Iron Fist on Netflix and I couldn't do it. And I'm a huge Power Man and Iron Fist fan. That was one of my favorite comic books growing up.
Yeah.
But I didn't love the execution there, and yeah, I was one of the people who thought that yes, Danny Rand could have been an Asian character. It uh, wouldn't have taken anything away from that character to have him be an Asian American character who
Yep.
has to walk between these two worlds. But
Yeah,
what
that was an
happens?
open door. That was an opportunity for everybody involved to kind of think differently a little bit. I
And you
want to,
lose space with your audience when you make those decisions, in my opinion.
yeah, and it's about
Parts
sort of,
parts of your audience,
and it's about modern sort of adaptation and sort of
right?
bringing and bridging gaps and making things challenging. And
Yeah,
I feel like yeah, I was disappointed in Iron Fist as well. Let's talk about. First, let's talk about your series here. You've got 6 issues to carve
yeah.
out an origin story for T'Challa. But I want to know about working with Marvel. Did they say you can't use this character because he's going to be in this movie or this TV show? Or like, did they sort of take any ideas off the table, or were you allowed to kind of throw in anybody that you wanted?
When I proposed, when I sent the proposal in, I um, there was one sequence that I wanted to have in issue 1. I haven't spoken about this yet anywhere, so um, this will be the first time I talk about it. But it was a sequence where I wanted, I called it like a clash of exotics. I wanted T'Chaka to face off against Fat Cobra, speaking of Iron Fist, he's a character from the Ed Brubaker Matt Fraction Iron Fist series,
Wow.
and he's basically like a big drunken brawler. And he's like, hey, I heard there's a guy who dresses up like a cat who can fight really good. I want to kick his ass. So he teleports magically into Wakanda, and they have a whole fight. And it's basically 2 characters from Hidden Kingdoms. And Fat Cobra would have said, yeah, you're hidden now, but nothing stays hidden forever. You need to prepare for the outside world. And my editor, Will Moss, who's great, he said, it's going to be too much to explain this character out of context to
Right.
people who are new to all this stuff. So that didn't happen. And maybe if I get to revisit this story in another way down the line, I'll work to get something like that in. But yeah, other than that, pretty much everything I wanted to do, I got to do. I sent in the outline, and we kind of iterated on it for a little bit. But I'm pretty much getting to do everything I want here.
That's awesome. In the first issue, we don't spend a ton of time with T'Challa. We
That's
find out
right.
about his grandfather. We find out about his father. And what a tragic tale, like another hero born out of some real sadness in a way.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't mean to cut you off, Vic. You can go
Yeah.
if you question.
Well, I think that's just an interesting element about this character.
Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to do is not invalidate, as little as possible, not invalidate already published stories about Black Panther and his family, his characters. That said, we don't know. We don't know a lot about his father's reign, right? We know how he died. We know that he had a mother who died in childbirth. But other than that, these characters were kind of ciphers. Like in Yami, his mother was a name on a page. She maybe appeared on like 3 or 4 comic book panels ever in terms of being drawn and having dialogue.
Well, she's an incredible character in this issue, and hats off to you. I didn't know that. That's amazing. You really
Yeah.
you care for her.
Yeah, no, I mean, I won't say that I created her because I didn't, but like, I definitely fleshed out this character because I wanted to. And my thinking with that was, we know that the Black Panther kings for centuries were probably, politicians, strategists, warriors, but T'Challa's a scientist. Where does he get that from? And the thing for me was, okay, my daughter likes to read. I know she gets that from me. Maybe T'Challa got his aptitude for science from his mother. And maybe she was a person who helped usher in a golden age of technological development for Wakanda. And I thought that was really important to do. And from there, I was like, oh, okay. So, and I thought of some different ways to build tensions between her and T'Chaka, to make her death mean something. not just in terms of the typical parental death plot beat in superhero origin stories, but means something more than that. Have consequences to Wakanda as a country and the lives of the people that knew her and loved her. And I also wanted to show Ramonda and T'Chaka meeting, because we've never seen Ramonda meet T'Chaka over like 40 years of comics. I was doing research when I was writing, and T'Challa first appeared in 1966, and Ramonda didn't appear until the 80s, in a storyline called Panther's Quest, written by Don McGregor, who's written a bunch of great seminal Black Panther stories over the decades. So yeah, but we didn't know anything about her. She just kind of showed up, like in the aftermath of T'Challa already being the Black Panther. So I wanted to show her being there for him. And the problem with this, we're talking about 50 years of continuity.
Yeah.
There's wrinkles, right? So I kind of have to dodge and bob and weave and stuff. But I want to tell a story about who his parents were, how they affected him, how his sense of himself came from the people that cared about him.
Well, what I love about it is that you create this sense of permanence, and you create this sense of passing on the responsibility and the challenge of being a king and a superhero at the same time. And now we're going into issue 2 and onward. We're sort of set up for this young boy warrior that's got to kind of rise up, which is rad.
I can tell you a little bit about issue 2. The solicits are out. So in issue 2, T'Challa's already king. We see him as an adult. We see him winning the role of the Black Panther, and then it's not a spoiler to say that Namor the Submariner is going to appear in the story. And if you read superhero comics, you can probably guess that the relationship, they first kind of hit it off poorly, but there's more going on there, and I want to use Namor as a foil because these characters have history in the comics.
There's such great parallels too, right?
Yeah,
They're such unique.
They're both kings.
Yeah.
One's a massive jerk.
I can't wait till Marvel says, "Yeah, we're going to make the Namor movie." That's going to be amazing.
Yeah. I think he'd be a great fit for a big widescreen epic.
Yeah.
But again, it's going to be a classic case of DC versus Marvel because Aquaman's well underway in terms of production. But yeah, so Namor's in issue 2. T'Challa's already king, and we start to see him reckon with what it means to be a king and to inherit all this responsibility in a world that's changing so much.
Talk to me about working with Marvel. First of all, how the hell did this happen? Because you're a critic and a journalist, and you know a lot of people in the creative spaces out there. But it's one thing to be able to write about things; it's a whole other thing to transition to become, in the stable with other creators. How did this happen?
It happened because of the writing about things part of my career. I know Ta-Nehisi Coates. We've been friends for a long time. When he started writing the Black Panther series, the main one, I was like, oh my God. He's like, I know, right? So we rekindled our friendship around his work on that. I never reviewed the series because that would be a conflict of interest, but I did do some long, wide-ranging interviews with him. We talked about all kinds of stuff. And his editor, Will Moss at Marvel, said, hey, do you think Evan would be interested in writing some Black Panther stuff? And, I'm going to try and make it sound like I don't have a huge ego, but I'd heard that over the years in writing about comics because people said, hey, you seem like you might be really good at this. But I always balked at it for various reasons. But this time, Ta-Nehisi was like, yo, it's not even me saying this. This is Will. So what's up? What are you going to do? Had some conversations with my bosses at Gizmodo Media. And they're like, this is really flattering. You should go for it. Let's try to find out a way to make it work. And I did. And then I met Will Moss at New York Comic Con in 2015, and 2016. And we figured out a way that we can try and make this happen. And from there, it was just like submitting ideas, refining them, and writing these scripts.
That's amazing. So you've known for a long time then that you're going to do this series.
Yeah.
You also have a day job, and you have to look at a million things. And I know how tough it is to just be a journalist covering all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you're a dad. How do you find the time, and how much time did Marvel give you to kind of put all these issues together?
So I had the advantage of um, a couple of months lead time after that initial meeting, where I was basically taking down lots of story notes, thinking of ideas, kind of woodshedding is what they call it in the jazz community. Just basically going off by yourself and working on your ideas. So and then I submitted the script to Will, and once I heard back that this was still greenlit, still happening, we started working on a tighter outline and figuring out the characters and approaches that we'd be doing for each issue. So it was, a lot of sleepless nights, and it still is. I try not to take away from my duties as a dad, and definitely not from my day job. Everybody at IO9 has been really encouraging and considerate in terms of me having to do this other stuff. But I mostly write. I write the comics when I'm not writing the blogs.
Well, hence not playing too many of 2017's video
right,
games.
No,
yes,
not at all. Yeah, I'm gonna have a hell of a backlog once this is all said and done.
Well, now that you've got this taste for it, and we're going to be getting a new Rise of the Black Panther every month for the next 5 months. The first issue is already available. And is it a physical copy, or is it something you can only get digitally?
Yeah, no, you can get it both. You can buy it in a comic shop, brick and mortar comic shops. Support your local comic shops, everybody.
Yeah, totally. How does that feel, man? Like, honestly, you've been reading comics your whole life. You're a massive nerd for this stuff, as am I. I can only imagine how incredible it must be to pick up your comic with your name on it.
It's amazing. I was texting with a friend of mine from college just over the weekend. He's like, yo, this is wild. We used to go to signings together, and now you just had a signing. Yeah. And the signing was one of the things that really drove home what a surreal kind of moment this is for me. My daughter insisted on staying the entire 2 hours for the signing, and she was great. She's really proud of me, which is an emotional aspect of this, which floors me. But I never thought I'd get here. I was never somebody who thought one day I'm going to write comics.
Yeah.
One day I'm going to write my favorite comic book character in the same year that a major motion picture is going to be coming out based on him.
That's amazing.
I never ever thought that. I'm enjoying it. I have to compartmentalize various parts of the experience. Like, if I
still got to be a pro, you can't be a
right.
freaking out fanboy about all this.
If I sit around and think that I'm writing the same character that my idols got to write. Christopher Priest, one of my favorite comic book writers of all time, had a defining run on the Black Panther. Dwayne McDuffie wrote the Black Panther, one of my favorite creators of all time. Other characters, other writers I love, Jonathan Hickman. So I can't stop and think about that stuff. I have to put the fan part of me aside in order to be a professional. But at the same time, I'll be writing like, you're putting words in Captain America's mouth now. You're putting words in T'Chaka's mouth now. It's wild.
You have the taste. Is this something that you want to keep going with? Is this? I don't want to get you in trouble with your day job, but is this something now that you would love a more regular gig with?
Yeah, I do. I would. The weird thing about this is almost. I'm not saying this is a hit record in terms of sales or reception, but for me, this is the best possible initial experience in creating comics there could be. I feel like this is something I was built to do. It's my favorite character. I've spent years writing about it from a critical perspective. Years reading about him as a fan. I feel like I know this character very, very well. So the challenge would be, do I want to do something like that again? Or do I want to do something where I have to learn from the ground up and maybe use a different set of tools
Mm.
and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't have anything in the works right now, um, but I feel like I've changed my approach to this craft has changed even in the year or so I've been doing it, and I want to kind of grow and sharpen and iterate how I do this stuff. So yeah, I'd love to be able to do that.
Awesome. Blake, I'm wondering if anybody, I haven't been able to read any of the chat comments or anything like that, but I'm wondering if anybody's got a specific question for Evan that may have stood out for you. If not, we'll go on to I think my final question for you, Evan, and it's to get an idea of, you're still a journalist and a critic around all of this stuff, so I'm really curious to hear some of your favorite writers that are building content right now, that are making comics that you're just blown away with right now.
Everything that Tom King does is amazing to me.
Yeah.
He kind of came out of nowhere, and he's got a damn near like 1,000 batting average for me. Like my first work I read of him was The Vision over at Marvel. Then he did Omega Man at DC. He's a DC exclusive now, and he's currently writing Batman, and he's killing it. I think everything that fascinates me as a critic and a kind of neophyte creator is he's doing. He's talking to the history of the character while also making new history, and I think that's fascinating. So I love him. I love Ryan North on Squirrel Girl. Chip Zdarsky at Marvel is writing Howard the Duck and Spectacular Spider-Man is great. I think he's really funny. Al Ewing at Marvel, I think is one of the most underrated writers in mainstream superhero comics right now. I love Saga at Image, Brian K. Vaughan, Fiona Staples. Brian Edward Hill is writing a series called Michael Cray for DC, which is amazing. He also has some creator-owned stuff at Marvel. Nyla Magruder did a graphic novel called MFK last year, which is amazing. Nnedi Okorafor is writing another Black Panther series called Long Live the King. I think that's digital only, and that's really it's great to be living in a moment where we have multiple interpretations of this character from people from different backgrounds.
Yeah, we're also in this moment too where I think the media is feeding interest from a bunch of different directions, and so we're getting some really cool creative risks in theaters and on television screens and in comic panels and digital spaces. It's who would have thought that we would live this, bounty-filled life as nerds of this stuff, right? It's incredible.
I mean, there's always room for improvement, but right now, if you had told me like I would have gotten a Luke Cage TV show on Netflix, I would have laughed in your face 20 years ago,
Yeah.
And that was good, and that it spoke to certain socio-cultural, political issues. I would have never thought it would have been possible. So I'm glad to be here for this moment.
Well, we're glad that you're here for this moment as well, Evan. And I definitely want to circle back with you once I've read all 6 of the issues and have you back, and once the movie is out as well. If you're game for that, we would love to have you back on the show.
Certainly am.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right,
well, take care, my friend. Right now, we're going to go into something totally different. We've just launched a new segment on the show. It's called This Day in Everything Cool. Take a look. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for January 16th. On this day back in 1962, filming began on a British spy thriller called Dr. No, starring Sean Connery as the iconic
Bond. James Bond.
The James Bond books by author Ian Fleming first began hitting shelves 10 years earlier, and although Dr. No wasn't the first adaptation, it was the most successful, kicking off the James Bond film series that continues to this day. Many different actors have since taken the lead role. The tone of the films and attitudes of its lead character have changed considerably over time, but it's easy to see the impact that Dr. No and other early Bond films still have to this day. On January 16, 1969, history was made not on Earth, but above it. The Soviet spacecraft Soyuz 4 and Soyuz 5 performed the first ever docking of manned spacecrafts while in orbit, with the two crafts joining together to allow their crews to transfer from one vehicle to the other. This was the first time this was done by any nation, beating the United States, which performed a similar maneuver a few months later. This was an important first step toward modern space travel, with manned spacecrafts docking with each other, as well as bigger space stations like the International Space Station. A little more recently, January 16, 2007 saw the release of the very first expansion for World of Warcraft, called the Burning Crusade. The main game was released in 2004, but the Burning Crusade was the first big drop of new content, giving players more area to explore, a higher level cap, and new missions. This helped propel World of Warcraft to be the biggest game in the world at the time and kicked off a new craze in fantasy MMO games. Blizzard is still releasing new expansions for World of Warcraft and are planning to keep the game going for years to come. I'm back. You give me a little bit more notice than that, Blake. Thank you. You're back. Okay. All right, we are back. So, yeah, lots of cool things happen in history every day, and we're going to be doing this day in everything cool every single day. You're back. But right now, we've got another brand new segment for you, which we will only be able to do once every year. It is 2018. You know, I apologize if I'm just letting you know that right now, but wake up, it's 2018. But we can't really get into all of the 2018 discussions without talking about some of the awesome things that happened in 2017. And I thought today would be a nice day to kind of, we did the rocket and ray guns and we awarded all kinds of stuff, and we had lots of people joining in with us, our friends from Happy Console Gamer and Kind of Funny, and also a lot of the sponsors out there, and Ben and Jose and Steve joined us as well. And I love the way it all came together, but it was kind of a summarized viewpoint of all of the best games of last year. I thought it would be cool for me to talk about my personal 10 favorite games of 2017. And I'm going to start with number 10, which was Cuphead. And this was an incredible Canadian-made, go Canada, action-adventure game, which is incredibly brutal, but as you are no doubt aware, it is an absolutely outstanding production through and through. This 1930s cartoon art style took all of our collective breaths away. But when I had this playing on my my 4K television, and I had it sort of just blaring at full volume, the other standout in this, as great as the visuals are, the audio and the music is incredible. I was just completely transported. This was just an incredible work of art, and I think back to me as a younger player and sort of thinking about all of the sort of dreams of being able to play something that looked like a cartoon. And, you know, we never had anything remotely close to that. Lots of cool, you know, animation styles and rotoscoping and things like that, but nothing close to what Cuphead did. So Cuphead was my 10th favorite game of 2017. My 9th favorite game of 2017 is a Nintendo Switch title, which you'll be able to see right there. It was ARMS. And ARMS, I think, is a little divisive. I don't know if everybody loves this game, but I was really just blown away by the character design, the fact that everything ran at 60 frames a second, and it looked so slick, and the animation was solid, and there was a lot of diversity in the types of characters and the types of animations and the types of environments. And then you reconcile with the fact that you've got these projectile weapon-based, almost like you're playing a first-person shooter, with different you know, attributes attached to each of the gloves that you have, changing up the strategy immensely as you're playing, especially when you play together. And I think this was one of the reasons why I fell in love with ARMS. This 2017 was a year that I really started to work quite a bit with Johnny Millennium from Happy Console Gamer. And John is an awesome guy, and he is exactly who you see on camera. He is as passionate and optimistic and joyful around video games as he presents himself to be, and I think I am too. And when we started playing these, it seemed to be quite a few Switch games. We played ARMS together, and we really had a blast. We had so much fun. We were Skyping with each other so we could see each other's faces as we were playing a multiplayer experience, and it was just so damn fun. But I also played this thing a lot when I was on the road and just wanted to have fun with my Switch. I just was really impressed. I didn't play it so much with the Joy-Con controllers. I would just use the Pro controller, and I had a blast. It was a super, super fun game. So if I'm thinking about the games that I had the most fun with last year, ARMS is number 9. Number 8 is Sonic Mania, and I'm going to put this full screen for you guys here too. This was another fantastic treat from Sega that I played on the Switch, and I did do quite a bit of traveling last year, so the Switch became a very well utilized machine for me. But I just love this, and I love the story of how Sonic Mania came together too, with all of the people that worked on the game coming from the fan community and building stuff that eventually got attention from Sega, and they said, yeah, okay, sure, we're going to sort of hand over the keys to the kingdom and let you build your own 2D adventure. And it really was just a direct correlation to all the stuff that I fell in love with on the Sega Genesis. I have such fond memories of the original Sonic games, particularly the first one, that when I played this, it was I cared, there was like this emotional connection to playing this thing. It has fantastic music, fantastic visuals that are, true to the source, and it just played perfectly. And it became this excellent addition to the Switch library as well. And of course, you can get it on every other platform, which I think also makes Sonic Mania one of the standout games of 2017. So that was number 8 for me. Number 7 is Injustice 2, and I'm going to play a little bit of the trailer for, I think this is the fight, the DLC for the Fighter Pack 3, which shows off a little bit of the Teen Titans, and I think Raiden's in there, and we know that Hellboy is a part of this collection. We know that Black Manta is a part of this collection. We know that not so much the Fighter Pack 3, but the entirety of Injustice 2. The thing that has blown me away about this game is that it never stops serving up content. And all throughout the year, not only did you get this incredible story that was like, it was so good that it made me go and buy all of the Injustice comic books, and I got completely addicted to all of the Injustice books. I think I'm caught up to all of the issues, but I was just, plowing through them because I just love this idea of heroes being turned against heroes and Superman feeling like he's all powerful. But the fighting mechanics are incredibly sound and fun, but they give you this tons of great single-player story content. Then they throw in character after character. The fact that they finally threw the Atom in there was a big deal for me, too. I've always wanted them to play with, size differences in the mechanics, and they've been able to do that. Now that we've got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I'm dying for that update as well. I can't wait. As soon as we get that in, we will definitely be doing a revisit to the game, but I plan on streaming some more Injustice 2. But that's why, look at that, Atom and Enchantress and the Turtles, so damn cool. Number 7 was Injustice 2. Number 6, of my favorite games of 2017 is Assassin's Creed Origins, and this was an absolute gorgeous stunner of a game. This is Ubisoft Montreal putting together, I think it's the strongest Assassin's Creed game, but obviously there's been so many of them that it kind of gets lost a little bit in the noise around this, but it was a perfect setting. Ancient Egypt is fascinating. The pyramids look incredible. All of the different environments that you get to sort of work your way through are gorgeous and captivating and fascinating and mysterious. And the side missions were interesting as well. If there's one complaint I will level at Assassin's Creed Origins is that it's a bit grindy, and you feel, especially coming in on the tail end of some of the games that I'll talk about in a little bit here, it just felt like it was maybe overstaying its welcome a little bit. But I think that's kind of the challenge of modern day AAA development, is you just got to build and build and build and put as many cool things into a title as you possibly can. But I think the RPG mechanics are a good move. The ship combat was actually really cool. I feel like there's so many characters in the game. Some of them get lost a little bit, but it's fun to murder them. It's fun to assassinate them. So I had a ton of fun with my number 6, and God, it's gorgeous. I've taken so many photos when I play that game as well, and I played it on the PS4 Pro and also on the Xbox One X, and it looks incredible on both of those. My 5th favorite game, so we're getting into our bottom 5 here, is a title that might surprise you. It's from Image and Form out of Sweden. It's called SteamWorld Dig 2, and I've put hours and hours and hours into this title. It is so addictive and so cool. I love the first SteamWorld Dig, which I played on the 3DS, and then it came to every other platform as well. But this was tuned. I played it on the Switch. It's another perfect marriage on the Switch. It kind of brings in a little bit of the Metroidvania explore and beef up and then retraverse into areas kind of gameplay, and fuses that with a little boulder dash and a little dig dug, which was so... games where you get enjoyment out of just moving through the world are the best kinds of games, where you can just sort of tinker and improvise and come up with stuff. And that's what you do in SteamWorld. You know, the fact that you carve your own path into the environment is so exceptionally fun. And then they've got this kind of cyber, punky, steampunky kind of twist on all of this stuff. And there's some dark edges around this sort of colorful, cartoony graphics, and cool music, fun characters, lots of great little surprises, interesting boss fights. Can't say enough good things about SteamWorld Dig 2. And I think you can get that on every platform as well, and I suggest you do. Number 4, while we're on the subject of Metroidvania games, let's talk about a real one. This is Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS. And I have always been a big fan of the 2D scrolling Metroid game. Super Metroid is probably the first game that I go to when I either plug in a Super Nintendo or when I got the SNES Classic. That was the first game I wanted to try out. I've bought that game several times on previous Nintendo platforms. It's amazing, and I've always wanted Nintendo to revisit the 2D scrolling, and the fact that they got a Spanish developer instead of a traditional Japanese internal developer to do this was a little bit like, oh my God, I hope they do an all right job. But they picked a company with some real pedigree. I forget the name of the developers, escaping my mind right now. But they handled this sort of 2.5 3D and 2D mechanics wonderfully, and I just got completely addicted. This was the game that I couldn't remove or try anything else on my 3DS until I beat this thing. And I packed it around for every day pretty much, and I would get a little farther, open up a new area, get some new abilities, and I just kept playing and beating tons of Metroids and fighting tons of bosses, and I had a smile on my face the whole damn time, even when it became very challenging and, I'd have to restart levels again over and over again. Incredibly, exceptionally cool, and I honestly hope that Nintendo doesn't forget about 2D Metroid as we go into Metroid 4. So that is, speaking of 4, that's my 4th favorite of the year. My 3rd favorite of 2017 was a little game, not so little, a little game exclusive to the PlayStation 4 called Horizon Zero Dawn, which I think is the best reason to have a PS4 Pro at this point, and a 4K television. You're not going to believe your eyes. It's like you're like seeing the world through brand new glasses or something. I mean, the level of detail is absolutely stunning. All of the foliage and the animals that you have to hunt down, and these machines that you have to face up against, and even the human encounters, and then like, it's really incredible, the level of detail going into a village and then having a conversation with one of the civilians inside of a village, and just seeing how much artistry and nuance is in all of the facial captured animation. It's so impeccably rendered and handled, and it really sets a high bar. And when you look at this game compared to other fantastic action RPGs, and we had a ton of them, Assassins is in there, and definitely Persona 5, and Nier Automata, and there's tons of them, and I'm sure you're listening to all the things that I'm forgetting about right now. But there's something production-wise about this game that just takes us to a new sort of era in games. Like, things are going to be different after Horizon Zero Dawn, And I think one of the surprising things is that it came from a company that has made fantastic shooters in the past. I'm actually missing Killzone, but Guerrilla Games was not the first company that you would probably rattle off when you think about the game that they built for us here. This is sensational. And I completely misread it, too. When every demo that I saw at previous E3s and things like that, I was like, oh, okay, it's probably going to be fun for a while, but it's going to devolve into, you know, just a bit of an action thing. I had no idea that this was as you know, expansive a role-playing experience with, you know, as much environmental diversity as this thing offers and all kinds of great mystery to kind of unlock and unravel. Phenomenal experience. Wonderful, wonderful game. And I haven't gone to play the Frozen Wilds yet, but that's on my list to do very soon. Now let's talk about number 2, and I think you guys could probably figure out what that is. This was the year of Mario in 3D returning to a Nintendo platform, and holy crap, what a joy Super Mario Odyssey is. I had conversations with Nintendo folks over the year, and you know, obviously you know what my number 1 choice is, but I talked about how much I loved Breath of the Wild, and I thought, how is Super Mario Odyssey going to even come close to that? And I kept hearing that internally at Nintendo, people were liking Mario Odyssey even more than Zelda, and I couldn't believe it, but I understand it now. This is a game that is effortlessly enjoyable, and it's filled with so much surprise around every corner. There's some kind of new widget or some kind of new thing that you uncover, and you feel so proud of yourself for being able to do that. And you know, it's also a perfect game to just pick up on, you know, pick up and play for, you know, a few hours on a flight or something like that, and just see how many new things you can uncover, and then you can pack it away and play on your next trip. Or I mean, you can enjoy this on the television as well, but there's something about its sort of bite-sizedness that makes this a perfect portable game, but it's also a robust, massive experience that when you think you're completed everything, you realize, wait a minute, no, I've got a gazillion more moons that I've got to go out and find as well. And also just weird, quirky things like the idea to become these different characters and these different objects. It puts a smile on your face, you know. And also, I don't think I've ever had more fun shopping for outfits than I have in Super Mario Odyssey, although Zelda is a close second for the costume changes. But Zelda is not a close second in any other list of mine because it is my favorite game of 2017. And as I've expressed before, it is also my favorite game of all time. And I'm playing still through the Champion's Ballad right now, the new DLC, which is a weird thing for me to be saying and talking about Nintendo's DLC. But for a couple reasons. One, this game offers so much just out of the box. And the idea that we want more is kind of insane, but God, we want more. And I actually hope that in this version of Hyrule that Nintendo has created for us, we get more DLC, because I feel like there's so many other nooks and crannies. I do wish we could start to play with other characters if we're going to get into more DLC as well, though. It'd be interesting to kind of change things up from just, you know, purely Link's perspective to some of the other great characters that they've introduced in here. Now, this is a game of you kind of you create your own story in a lot of ways. I mean, you pick up, you know, remnants and pieces and snippets of backstory, and you uncover sort of a generalized kind of viewpoint of the mystery. It's definitely not as you know, granular a storytelling achievement as either Assassin's Creed Origins or Horizon Zero Dawn, but I think it's that mystery that makes Zelda so personal and so satisfying, and so much this about you know, your own solitary trip into this escapist world, into this escapism, and so rewarding. I mean, whether you play for 15 minutes and you just go into, which is impossible, but you can. You go into the forest and I don't know, you find a Korok seed, or you cook up a cool recipe or something, or you play for extended hours and you're finding new shrines that took a while to get because you've got to do some, you know, maybe some inane side quests. Utilizing all these external tools that you have, like the magnetic abilities and the time stop abilities and things like that. so much freedom, so many cool ways that the game plays with physics. This game has completely changed the way that I think about landscape in video games. I want to be able to climb everything. It really kind of made playing the last Uncharted game a very different experience for me, because I felt hemmed in, even though that's a pretty expansive experience as well. But Zelda has no walls. Zelda has no barriers. You basically can do what you want to do. And yeah, a profound achievement and a shocking one. And what blows me away too is that you can play this on the Wii U. You know, like, what a send-off for that platform, which was a good platform that nobody really cared about. But yeah, this is a defining moment in video game history for sure, and we're going to see a lot more that is influenced by The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. My favorite game of 2017, my favorite game of all time. So there's a nice little taste of those things. And now we are going to move on to a new segment that we have started up again. We got the crank rolling on a brand new buried treasure. All right, you guys, especially you fans of first-person shooters out there that are kind of also closet historians, I've got a great one for you. It's Black from Criterion, who also brought us the incredible Burnout games. Black was a first-person shooter that came out of nowhere. We'd never expected Criterion to make us a first-person shooter, and it was a pretty cool one, very elaborate, with a huge emphasis on making the guns and the gunfire incredibly sexy, you know, akin to the way they made their vehicles so cool in the Burnout games. They wanted mass destruction and, you know, lots of crazy moments told through this kind of cheeseball, you know, spy story and espionage type story about, you know, people sort of betraying each other and sort of infiltrating different enemy camps. It was structured very linearly. That's hard to say, linearly. You know, you went from one level where you're kind of a stealth mission and one level where you're in the middle of a town just blowing all kinds of stuff up. And, you know, for the most part, the game kind of played at one kind of sort of level, which I think is a criticism that you could throw against it. But it's still impressive to see the level of detail and the level of polish. The environments looked beautifully destroyed, which was something that we all sort of tag onto the Gears of War franchise. And it was just fun to play. There was this accessibility and this kind of joyful sort of get lost in the gameplay-ness of this title, and I think that's something that is really emblematic of the work of Criterion Games. This is an amazing developer, and I know they've lost a bunch of people to Ghost Games and other studios out there, but Criterion has got some great pedigree, and I think if you're fascinated in the history of video game companies, or you just want to, you know, take a trip down memory lane and have some fun shooting action. I noticed that Black is available to play on the Xbox One. I have it loaded on my Xbox One X, and it is a super cool game to re-experience, and that's why I call Black a great buried treasure. Go for it. All right, that's a classic experience right there. Love Criterion Games. If anybody is going to pass this over to Criterion, tell them how much I love them, and I'm just waiting for that announcement that Criterion is working on some VR content for Battlefront 2. I've heard that Burnout Paradise might be getting remastered, and I'm all for that. But yeah, I love that team and the people that comprise that team, which I know are kind of scattered to the wind a little bit, but hell of a game studio. But right now, let's switch things back into a different realm. We're going to talk about a streaming show called The Tick.
The world owes you a hug, small soldier. And I'm the one that's gonna give it.
No.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's it. This is the good stuff.
Well, what do you know? This is a first for me. I'm reviewing an Amazon Prime Video streaming show. This is The Tick. Of course, it's a superhero show, so it caught my attention. It took me a little while to get to this thing. I looked at the first 6 episodes, and this is not really the origin story of The Tick, who is now played by Peter Serafinowicz, and he does a very good job. He also does a fantastic Adam West as Batman impression.
Villain, you face The Tick.
Which I think is kind of funny. Reminded me a little bit of Nicolas Cage in Kick-Ass. And it's, puts a smile on your face for sure. There's a charm and a comfort that you dig about that approach right away, which I thought was cool. But this is really about Gavin Newman, who plays Arthur in this. It's his origin story. He's this nebbish accountant type that had some traumatizing experiences with supervillains, and I won't spoil anything in this thing. And he is conflicted because he has been on the pursuit of a nefarious supervillain, and just as he's about to kind of, seal the deal with information, he comes into possession of a really cool costume that gives him some awesome powers and kind of turns him into a superhero against his better judgment and his wishes. And the Tick, of course, has a great big fondness for this guy and is very encouraging, gives him great big, gentle, caressing hugs to try to cheer him up and steer him on the course to do what's right for humanity, which was kind of funny, and I dug all of that stuff. Arthur has a sister who is very concerned about his mental health and well-being, and there's some really interesting dynamics between Arthur and his sister throughout the 6-episode arc that I saw. We also meet the villainous Miss Lint.
The name is Miss Lint.
Ha! I don't get it.
Played by Yara Martinez, who is very good in this show. She's definitely got a mean streak about her, but it's sort of undercut by the fact that dirt is just attracted to her, and she's constantly dirty and has fuzzy stuff all over herself while she's trying to be a mean badass, and I think she plays that wonderfully. We also meet this other vigilante who is kind of like Deathstroke, who just slices and dices his way through. He has this killer boat and this AI companion that likes to create his own theme song, which was very funny.
Shut the fuck up.
And there's lots of sort of lots of cool little one-liners and quips, and it's definitely a funny deconstruction of the whole superhero genre, just like the Tick comic books were, and just like the old Tick series was, and the Tick animated show.
Oh, little zap.
It's a great concoction, and I'm happy to see that Ben Edlund is involved with this as well. He's the creator of the original Tick property, and I think he's done some writing on some of the episodes as well. So it has this authenticity permeating through it, but also a uniqueness from the previous Tick series, which was also very good. So it kind of, creates its own mystique and its own sort of value set, and I like that. But I have to be honest, I wasn't laughing out loud when I watched it. I was charmed, and I was smiling, and I would chuckle every once in a while, but it's not busted gut funny. And honestly, I feel like the actors are capable of getting to that, but they're not really given that in the script and the situations and the circumstances that we have. The effects are also not terrific. There's scenes of Arthur flying, and they look a little hokey, almost Greatest American Hero hokey, which is a nice homage. And why isn't that show brought back? That would be an awesome show in 2018. But you know what? I still dug the Tick. I'm anxious to find out where this series goes. I expect that we're going to see a lot more superheroes, maybe some familiar ones and some brand new ones from the sort of Tick universe. But I'm just happy to see Amazon getting into the game like this and sort of going toe-to-toe with Netflix on ideas and concepts that are, as kind of silly and fun as the Tick is. I dig this show. I don't love it. It's not my favorite superhero show, and we live in this era where there is a bounty of great superhero television, but it's definitely worth checking out. I'm going to give the Tick a 7.5 out of 10. So part 2 of season 1 with a bunch more episodes is coming out in February. I can't wait to see those, and I will do my best to get you a review of the totality of season 1, and let's see if Amazon's got a bit of a hit there. One thing, this is the first time that we've done this where we've put together all of this edited content and some of this live stuff. I hope you've been enjoying this. We definitely want to hear from you, but one thing that, obviously we're going to have to work our way up to is, because Blake is working the computer to kind of queue up all the video content and making sure that all the feeds and stuff are working and you guys can hear everything okay. We would like to have more interaction with you guys, and we'll work our way up to that. But we are going to end every episode of the live Electric Playground stuff that we do in the studio with a new segment called Let's Play and Chat. And I think the rule that we're kind of putting, because we're trying to get this down to a nice tight hour, so that everybody's got something valuable, and worthwhile out of an hour, out of 60 minutes of content. And so we're going to do like 15 minutes of a Let's Play, which isn't tons of time, but it'll give you a little bit of a chance to check out a game with me. And we'll do some talking. We'll do some chatting about anything, not necessarily about the game. So if you've got questions or comments or anything like that, best thing to do is to post all caps question or all caps comment, and then that'll catch the eye of Blake, I think, because I'm going to be doing the playing and the answering and the chatting and stuff like that. So, but we definitely do want your engagement. And one thing that I do want to tell all of you guys is tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at the hype for 2018. I'm very curious to hear from you guys if you want to put together a video just explaining, a very brief one, doesn't have to be a super long one, explaining the one game that you are most excited for. We will compile a few of those videos and run some of that content tomorrow. So you just say, for 2018, I'm most excited about X game, and tell us why. And if you post that in an unlisted category on YouTube, you can private message us on our YouTube channel, or you can private message us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/electricplayground. We want to encourage you guys at certain points to get us some content that we will put into our content and sort of make it about all of us telling the story around these things that we care so much about. But right now, let's go to our Let's Play and Chat segment of the show. And today we're going to be taking a look at Battle Chef Brigade. I am starting the timer right now, and let's go into this thing. So a quick description about this game. It's a weird one. It was a Kickstarted game that Adult Swim ended up publishing, and this is a game about a master chef, and she gets invited to this tournament in this walled city, and she has to square off against different also master chefs, and they have to not just cook, but they have to go and hunt the ingredients, which makes this game slightly different. And it's a bit of an RPG as well. Let's challenge this guy right here. And so what we... Oh, he doesn't want to fight with me. Okay. So he said no. Let's challenge this guy. Thrash, I know what you see. I know that look when I see it. You want a duel, don't you? You've got a fire going. I do. All right, I accept that challenge. And so you go to your loadout screen and you check out all of the different gadgets and things that you picked up. And I've got my double jump shoes on. I've got a satchel that will let me carry a little bit more, some more ingredients when I go out there. This cookie jar gives me a couple extra health points, and I've got 2 items of cookware. Everything's good. Oops. Let's challenge. Okay, here we go. I pressed the wrong thing. Continue.
Let's do this.
So now we fade to black and we go into the cooking arena, and this is where we get judged not just on our cooking skills, but it's about finding the best ingredients and cooking things up properly, and making people excited. So we are here in Brigade Town in Capital City. We're in the Kitchen Coliseum. There's a good quirky sense of humor about this, interesting characters. The art style is definitely, kind of flash-based and stuff like that, but it's got an animation, almost a Saturday morning animation kind of quality to it. Maybe not with the, detailed frames of animation, but I certainly dig the look of it.
I woke this morning reminded of a quote from the legendary chef
I woke this morning
Robichon.
reminded of a quote from legendary chef Robichon. An ingredient is only
extraordinary
extraordinary as the chef who wields it. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of this dialogue and jump in as quickly as we can into some actual gameplay here, which is not the way that you would want to play this game. This is not something that you speed play, because you want to pick up the quirk and find out who these characters are and get into it a little bit. Got a question, Blake?
Yeah. Hang on. I think.
Okay. All right. So
Vive la
I'm going to
Brigade!
go and so we want to cook with these specific ingredients. It's a dragon battle, and so what we do is we don't just stay in the kitchen. we actually got to go out on the playing field here, and we have to chop up some of the killer plants that are out to get us. And you pick up some what is this? Piranha stomach. And fight this big bull beast thing here, this sort of rhino bull deal.
Can you guys hear me now?
All right, we got him. Pick that up. Piranha stomach. One of the mics isn't showing up. Okay, just yell it out. Oh, what is this thing? Oh, this must be the dragon. Oh my god, I haven't seen this character yet. So I have ability. This dragon is ass. Uh-oh. Oh, I can't even kill it yet because my satchel is filled with ingredients. Yeah. The idea is it will be daily when we're in Vancouver, but we go on location quite often. And the reason why the other thing that we're going to start to do is the rundown will be live as well when we're both in town, which we didn't want to start that because I'm going to be going on a little bit of a vacation. I've got a birthday coming up next month. And getting out of town to celebrate. It's a big birthday. I'm going to have some fun. And so what we're deciding to do is after that getaway, we're going to go live with the rundown as well as the rest of the content. So we're going to do our best, and it's a lot of work, but it's kind of stuff that we were doing already anyways. We're just putting it all together in one package. So that's kind of the plan. Let us know what you think. This is our kind of our new challenge and our new idea for the new year. But we want to kind of keep challenging ourselves and doing things a little bit differently and learning from you know, the content that we're making with you guys. And the other thing that we will be doing as well, because I know that you guys enjoy seeing a lot of the games that I have access to, and I enjoy playing them with you, is it might take a little while because we're still sort of finding all of the disciplines and getting all of the strategy together around putting this much material together, but I will also be streaming, you know, maybe some late night streams or off-hour streams beyond what we do with the show every day. Uh-oh, so I was killed. I hadn't been killed before. Putting the mic right in front of me? Oh, I see. Because I'm looking over this way. Gotcha. Okay, I've got a minute and a half of hunting time, but I haven't gotten the dragon. I think the dragon is the big deal. So it looks like when you die in this, it's not that big of a deal. It just eats up some time. So you kill all these cutesy birds, but they're not really birds. They're weird creatures. That was a cheapy horn. And this dragon is just kicking my butt. Oh, I have some powers. I have this, I have that magical ability. Tommy will definitely be on the show. I am talking with him, and we are talking about doing some cool collaborations. You guys will have to stay tuned for that. Nothing I can announce right now, but very soon. I kind of screwed that up. I didn't get so. Here's the other part of the gameplay. You've got a, but we're going to have all kinds of guests, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. In fact, I have to confirm with him, but I believe that Johnny Millennium will be a guest with me tomorrow on the show, which will be fun. So I screwed that up. So you have to cook as well, and cooking is, oh yeah, thrashed meat. And cooking is a big part of the experience, and it's like oh, this is going to be brutal. He got all the points. It's a little bit like a gravity-based puzzle game where you're kind of turning the objects around and trying to get rid of colors, and then that makes the dish a little bit better. So I got 3. I got 0. I got no dish whatsoever. Oh, I'm so. That was a poor performance. Let's see if I can do. I think there's a practice cooking session which I can. Oh, I can. Oh no, I can't. Okay.
Quinn Eklund has a good question.
Yep.
He wants to know what inspires your love of video games.
What inspires my love of video games? You know, I had it since my first introduction when I was a kid. I just, they were just lines and dots, and I could see the imagination behind them. And one of the things that always blows me away about video games is like one day they weren't there, and then the next day they were there. You know, it wasn't this gradual. It was in the background, but it wasn't like the film business or the radio business, the record business, where there were sort of gradual pieces that sort of came into play, and then the technology got cheaper. It was like this weird idea that Ralph Baer kind of recognized could be a commercial thing, and then Nolan Bushnell kind of picked up the baton and made it a real business. I just love that. I just love that story. It's like, well, wait a second. If we can manipulate these objects on the screen, maybe we can have fun. And then it was like 15 years of Pong and really simplistic things, and then all of a sudden we were telling stories. You know, like we started to have characters like Pac-Man and the idea of alien invaders and space invaders and asteroids destroying a spaceship. Just as Star Wars and all that stuff was becoming so big, it was like the perfect accompaniment to that kind of crazy imagination, you know. And I loved it right away. I was the evangelist in my high school. I had all of these old classic systems, they were new then, but they were classic. They're classics now. And I would invite my friends over, and we would just get lost in all of these games. And they were very simplistic compared to what we have now, but they still really entertained me. And then I didn't lose that fascination. And you know, obviously they became a lot more sophisticated, and they became a new way of communication, and a new way of communicating, and a new way of telling stories. And it is that constant state of change, which I love so much about games. You know, it does not stand still. Mm-hmm. I am going to Toy Fair. I can't wait to go to Toy Fair. I'm not going to be there for the whole thing. I'm going to be there for a day and a bit or so, but I'm going to collect some interviews and sort of see what's up for the year, and reconnect with a few folks that I haven't seen in a few years. But that was always one of my favorite trade shows, and I'm psyched to be going back. Super fun. That's in New York. So you'll be seeing a rundown or two from New York, I think. Okay, this dragon is having his way with me. I have to kill it, though, because we got to cook it, right? We have a minute and a half on the clock here. Come on, Minna! It's either Minna or Mina. Let's do this. So what do you guys think? Battle Chef Brigade look like something you would be interested in playing? Or do some of you have this already and you're embarrassed by how poorly I'm playing it? There we go. There we go. Oh, I wish I had fire breath. Dead. Oh my god. You know what? I'm just going to cook what I have. Okay, so you grab from your pantry. I've got ruby jerky. Let's put that down there. I didn't name any of this stuff, by the way. Boom. Chipchi breast. Corona nectar. So you're matching colors, and then that makes separate levels. Okay, that's good. And then you cook, so you match the colors. So this becomes the gravity-based puzzle element of this thing. Time's up. Oh no.
Thank you for your hard work, chefs. Let's see what our judge.
That's the game timer. There's a timer on how quickly you're going to cook. I know. There's 2.5 minutes left of Let's Play and Chat. So I have a question for you guys, and you can leave this in the comments below, and you can let us know. But thoughts on the first episode and what you would like to see, and are you a fan of us making a show like this as opposed to a bunch of segments? What we are going to do is we are going to cut these up into separate pieces as well, so people, if they just want a buried treasure, if they just want a review or you know, my top 10 or the interview that I did with Evan, you're going to be able to watch all of that content separately as well. So, you know, we're trying something new, but we hope you like it, and we encourage your feedback, and definitely, if you do like it, tell some people and participate in the live content as much as you can, because we want to hear from you. We want you guys in the show. All right, so I made some sauteed ruby jerky, and I got hammered by this guy. Thrash destroyed me. All right, I didn't do a very good example of being a kick-ass Battle Chef Brigade player, but that's a little taste, no pun intended, of this game. Oh, so I can rematch, okay. All right, let's see. We got a minute left there. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, Jake the Cat Thief says he loves this format.
Oh, sweet, okay. Yeah, we felt like we wanted to build something that utilized a little bit of our disciplines at building television content, which is what we've been doing pretty much every day with our rundowns and stuff. And also did this with you guys. And so, and this is something to note as well, like we're gonna have guests either in the studio or Skyped in. And, you know, I'll ask as many questions as I've got with them, but we encourage you to, if you've got questions, if there's something specific you'd like to know from these folks, we want you engaged in that conversation, so feel free to ask anything. And, you know, we're also always reading the comments and stuff like that, so if you watch this in its archived state, and you've got some follow-up stuff that you want to share with us, definitely do that. Okay, let's see if I can make any headway at all with this damn dragon. Basically have 5 minutes, it looks like, to cook up a storm. Oh! That's an obnoxious sound. All right, that's the timer done on our first Let's Play and Chat segment. That's Battle Chef Brigade. I'm going to stay true to my word, and I'm going to cut it right there. But thank you all very much for watching. Electric Playground is back, season 28, and we'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode for you. Thank you all so much for watching, and have yourselves a fantastic evening.